Oh, Abraham, 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 Abraham. Sometimes in the Bible we get a glimpse of some amazing and great people who God used to do wonderful things. Today we look at Abraham after he had decided to follow God. He had this encounter with God that was amazing, that led him into a journey away from home, a slow but sure journey into the Canaan land. And today we encounter him when he is experiencing a trial, a test. And sometimes that's how it works in the Christian life. It's borne out again and again in the Bible that after a triumph, there usually comes a temptation. And that is the case with Abraham. And he's not the only one that we see that has such an experience. Joseph had an amazing dream and then spent 11 to 15 years in prison or as a slave. David beat Goliath, and then not long after that, King Saul hates him. We have all kinds of stories like this in the Bible. And today we look at a story where Abraham is in the promised land, he's following God, and a famine comes. And so his faith is, in a sense, tested. And so his choice is to stay in Canaan, let God provide, or go down to Egypt where there's food. The problem in Egypt is, it's not then, it wasn't like it is today. There weren't protections. And even today, if you lived in a foreign land as a foreigner, there would be certain alienations you would experience. So there was some insecurity if you went to Egypt. And he was very worried about his wife and his family and his own well-being. Okay, maybe more so about his well-being, because this is what happens. Now there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to live there for a while because the famine was severe. As he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife Sarai, "I know what a beautiful woman you are. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife.' Then they will kill me, but let you live." So Abraham was afraid. He was afraid for his life, afraid for his household. And so as he's about to enter Egypt, he actually has a choice, although I'm sure he doesn't see that. The choice is to trust God. He could have trusted God in Canaan. He could have trusted God in Egypt, that God would take care of him. But I don't know that he had those thoughts. His primary concern was he didn't think he was going to live through the experience. And so he concocted a lie. And so a lie is never a great choice, and it certainly wasn't in this case. It has a long-ranging impacts in Abram's life, because lying demonstrates a lack of trust in God. When Abram came to Egypt, the Egyptians saw that Sarai was a very beautiful woman. When Pharaoh's officials saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and she was taken into his palace. So when Abram gets to Egypt, they do think his wife is beautiful. But he's concocted a lie now, and they don't know that she's his wife. And so now Sarai ends up in an amazingly horrible situation. She gets taken into Pharaoh's palace as one of his concubines. Now, Abram, on the other hand, is getting all kind of riches poured on him. So this is really, really a bad deal. It's a bad deal for Sarai, his wife, but it's also a bad deal for Abram, because now he's broken trust in his own family with the woman that God has promised to provide his heir through. And so this has impacts on their marriage the rest of his life. Because Abram didn't trust God, a vertical trust, then he broke a horizontal trust with his wife. And that's a good lesson for us. Our faith in God will greatly help our relationships here on this earth, will greatly enable us to love people and care for them as they should be cared for. When we don't trust God, we often end up breaking relationships here. So we don't want that to happen. The cool thing is, God's good. And so even though Abram was faithless in this regard, and even though he had a lot of faults, and that's one of the things I love about the study of Abraham/Abram, is that he was an honest guy. The Bible paints him in an honest light. The truth is, God just shows up for him. With God, failure's just never fatal. It's never final. It's never over as long as God has something to say about it. And him being the Word through Jesus Christ, he's always got something to say about it. So this is what happens. The Lord inflicted serious diseases on Pharaoh and his household because of Abram's wife, Sarai. So this is a bad situation for Abram's wife and for Abram. Obviously, Abram's kind of in the lap of luxury, but his wife is in a horrible situation. So God intervenes, and God sends these diseases upon Pharaoh's house, and at some point it becomes clear to him that the problem is that this woman that he's brought into his harem is actually Abram's wife. And he could have really freaked out at that point. He could have killed Abram and her. He could have reacted violently, but he didn't. And so he's looking at this guy who is going to be the founder of faith. I mean, in a few different religions. And he's looking at this guy who lied to him and put him in a terrible position as a king, as a pharaoh, and introduced into his family all of these diseases, all because Abram was afraid for his life, because he didn't trust God. Whenever we don't trust God, it can lead us into deception, whether that's self-deception, where I lie to myself, whether it's Facebook deception, where I present this false reality of my life and my family to the world. We are very good at deceiving ourselves and other people around us. We need to live with integrity and with authenticity. We need to do that because we trust in God. That yes, even though we're failing people and we have broken relationships in our lives and we need to work on those relationships, or we have problems and we need to work on those problems, even though we have those, God's grace is always being ministered to us. And just because we've fallen down, just because we've lost, does not mean we're losers. Just because we've failed doesn't mean we're failures. In fact, all we have to do to win in most cases is just get up one more time than we fell down. And that's the way it is in life, and especially the way it is in faith, when you have the power of the Holy Spirit to enable you to do that. So don't fail greatly. Win greatly. Learn to trust God. Learn to trust God as your Father, Jesus Christ as His life within you, and the Holy Spirit as a power to empower you. Learn to trust Him. And even when you fail, God will pick you up and take that failure and use it as a treasure in your life, as a lesson, as a gift that you can share with and give to other people.